This is the Your Career Story podcast, and you're listening to episode 76, How to Take Control of Your Financial Future with Ryan Lee. Welcome to Your Career Story podcast, a show that's designed for rockstar professionals looking for that extra booster shot of confidence in their careers. Whether you're trying to get clarity on a job transition, want some work-life balance inspiration, or need a strategy to snag that promotion or raise, this podcast is for you. I'm your host, Jena ex-Wall Streeter turned startup junkie who now coaches hundreds of clients, empowering them to take back control of the job search and land their dream job. So sit back, grab a glass of wine, and prepare yourself for your weekly boost of career confidence. Hello, friends, and welcome back to another episode of the Your Career Story podcast. Today, I have a very special guest here, Ryan Lee, who is going to be coming and chatting with us a little bit about what it actually means to be financially free. If you have been listening to this podcast, you know that I care about the money that you make. We talk about negotiating. We talk about how to think about your career in the long term, and your finances are obviously a huge part of that. So I'm really excited. Ryan and I had never really met before we recorded this, but Ryan was on a podcast of a friend of mine, Ellen, and I was on her podcast as well. And I was listening to his podcast episode with her. And I said, I have got to get this guy on here chatting with all of you about thinking about your financial future. So Ryan, thank you so much for joining us today.
Jena, it's an absolute pleasure. To be honest with you, I love your story. I love your story. The fact that you and I, we come from similar backgrounds, but you're so committed to helping people live their best life. And our profession, what we do with the majority of our waking hours, drives so much of people's happiness and well-being. And so I love that you help people be intentional in that area of their life.
Thank you. So why don't you just tell us a little bit about how did you get into this? So you came from a corporate background, right? So how did you get into talking about this topic?
Yeah, that's a great question. Honestly, Jen, I can't remember how deep I went into my backstory on Ellen's podcast, but I'll kind of give you just a little bit of an overview for me. I grew up really traditional. In the back of my mind, I always knew that you go to college, right? I just knew that, right? And my father, he's a first generation college graduate, and it was just preached and taught in my home that was just the path. But for me, I kind of lost my way in high school. In fact, I dropped out of high school. And when I finally got my life back on track, I was 23. And again, I didn't think anything of it. I just went to school. And my goal was, I was so behind. I felt so behind in life at that point that I just wanted to get through college as fast as possible, because it wasn't a matter of being at college. It was just, that's what you do to get working. And I graduated, and I'll never forget that very first job I took. Yes, I was a little bit excited, but when I got my first paycheck, I was actually extremely disappointed, right? I remember sitting on the bank.
Like, what the heck? Where is all this money gone?
No doubt. Yeah. I mean, I had just I actually went through and I did my 4-year degree in 2. That's how hard I hustled through college. I just ran right through it. And I had to move to a different city. My wife and I were living in a little ratty apartment. And I remember getting that first paycheck. And after all the taxes and deductions and insurance came out, I made less with a 4-year degree after 2 weeks of working than I did in college. I had a little entrepreneurial gig in college that I used to pay for my tuition. And I made less after 2 weeks with a college degree than I did in a weekend using my college or my side hustle gig. And I remember thinking to myself, man, I should just quit now. But again, that social conditioning kicked right back in. And I was like, no, you have a college degree. And so I resolved at that point to climb the corporate ladder as fast as I could. And, for me, over the next 2, 3, 4, 5 years, I got promotion after promotion after promotion. And in the beginning, yes, it was exciting. Every promotion came with a little bit more pay and a bigger office and all that kind of stuff. But what I realized along the way is every promotion, it really came with strings attached. I was trading a portion of myself for extra money, for a bigger office, for more prestige. And I got to a point where, and I'm grateful I got there fast, but I got to a point where I looked at my life and it wasn't anything like I had at one point envisioned it to be. And I started questioning the reality and the path and what I was doing with life. And that's really what opened me up to look at my money world and say, look, yes, as a provider for my family, I have to make money. But how do I be more intentional with what I'm doing, both as a profession as well as with my investing, to be empowered with money rather than feeling like a victim of money?
I love that. I think that victim mentality of money is so rampant, especially in corporate world, because, this is something I rework kind of my clients' brains around, is like, at the end of the day, you are actually an asset to a company. Think about it like that, instead of thinking that the company, you're indebted to the company, right? Like, you have to reframe your mindset. And the same thing holds true for your money. You have to not act as a victim. And I know that for myself in my career and just in my life in general, I have definitely operated out of that mentality many times, and acted like, I was a victim to whatever my financial situation was. But you're saying the opposite, that being in that experience of going through your own career journey, you came out thinking, okay, I need to figure out this money thing. So what happened next?
Well, so for me, and I love that you say that, Jenna, because I believe, the number one thing that's going to affect your life, it's your perception, right? It's your paradigm.
Totally.
And if you are a victim of your life, your paradigm is life is happening to you, right? But if you think and act like a producer, if your paradigm is that of a producer, life, no matter how hard, no matter how good, no matter what it's serving you up those experiences for a purpose. Life is giving you an opportunity to say, what is this going to help me learn and who must I become to advance the trajectory of my life? And so for me, I remember the very first promotion. I'll go back a little bit. I got this promotion, and I was managing. So I was about 18 months out of college, and I was managing a team of over 100 people. And
what industry were you in, by the way? What industry?
Yeah, the first industry I went into was operations. And so I went, in Texas, I went through K through 12 schools, and we would commercialize their food service program to help that be a revenue driver for the school district. And, I got this big promotion, and it was one of the most prestigious accounts in the DFW area. And some of the people I was managing, they'd been in the game for years, right? And they were making tens of thousands of dollars more than I was. And now I'm their manager. And I remember my boss came in to kind of negotiate with me my salary. And it was so funny, right? Because she asked me, we were taking a walk around the school district. And she asked me, Ryan, what do you want? And without thinking about it, right, my first response, and it was maybe naive, but my first response was, I want to be happy. And her immediate response to that response of mine was, cut the crap, Ryan. How much money do you want to make?
Wow. Oh my gosh.
It was so funny. And I thought to myself, well, I guess it's a money game. And I took on that paradigm for the next couple of years. I was willing to set aside my happiness, my fulfillment in the pursuit of money. And, what I learned along the way is money will never, ever give you fulfillment, right? Money is just a tool. And I think that's one of the biggest challenges that most people find in their money game is they look to money, they project to money to help them find happiness. And no matter what you do with money, right? If you buy a new car or a new house or, some new clothes or whatever it might be, those are just things. And you might find temporary happiness in those things, but it will never give you fulfillment. But on the flip side of that, what you do with your unique skills, talents, and abilities in the service of other people, which is today a job or a profession, right? If you can be intentional with that, right, and find a way to live authentically and access those unique talents, skills, and abilities and put them in the service of other people, you'll make more money and you'll be more fulfilled along the way. And so at that point, I spent about 3 more years in that corporate career, and it was just grinding me. Every promotion I took I just was trading a portion of myself. And I kept telling myself one day I would have enough money to buy my life back. And, this happened right around 2008. 2008, every dollar I had saved up to that point, disappeared in front of my face.
Right.
And then I realized, oh my gosh, I'm on a career trajectory that I'm suffering through. I can't do this for 40 years. I'm losing connection with my wife, my children. I don't, at the time that all of this happened, I didn't even live in the same state as them because I traveled so much.
Wow. Yeah.
And I just did a reset. Just did an absolute reset across the board. I quit that industry. I walked away from that, and I still produce today. I love what I do today, but I started really going on a journey to identify what brings me fulfillment. What am I good at? And how do I turn that into a profession? That's what's led me to what I do today. And then on the investing side of things, I realized I didn't have any control, right? As I had been told, just like I had been I had been conditioned to think that college is the pathway. I had also been conditioned to think that, well, you work for 40 years, you put your money in a 401k, you cross your fingers and you hope that it works out. And, in 2008, I thought I was the only one who lost money. I thought I had just did it wrong. And, I remember looking and talking to all my coworkers who were in the game longer than I was. And man, they were all in the same spot I was, right?
Right.
they had lost money. And I remember talking to someone I looked up to quite a bit. In fact, he had mentored me at the earliest stages of my career. And I thought he had it all figured out. And he was his intention before 2008 was to retire, in the next 5 to 10 years. And 2008 totally shifted that for him. And I realized, holy cow, I'm doing the same thing he's doing, the exact same thing he's doing. But yet I was hoping to become free faster. And I realized at that moment, if I don't have control over what I'm investing in, where I'm investing my money, A, I can never predict the outcome. I'm just kind of guesstimating and hoping. And B, I can never impact the outcome. If I want to go faster, that's not possible if I don't control it. So I went on a crusade at that point to take control over my life, to look at life and say, life is happening for me. How do I take control of my profession? How do I take control of my investing? And how do I build and live a life that matters today and not wait and defer that life until this, hopeful day in the future?
Yeah, I love that when you say take back control, because I say that to my clients a lot, take back control of your career. So you're saying take back control of your future, of your career, as well as your money. So share with us a little bit about, what you're doing now as it relates to that.
So, I still stayed in my career for a while because I was the only, and still I'm the only income earner at the time in my family. And my oldest son, he had some major medical issues at the time. And so I had to be employed. And that, it kind of scared me to take a step away and to consider the possibility of quitting. And so I transferred industries a couple of times. But, ultimately what I did is I started to find my passion in the mornings. I would show up to my office 2 hours early. And I read the book, The One Thing, way back in the day, and I've read it several times.
Love that book.
Oh,
Love
so
that
good,
book.
isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah. It's so good.
I started to set goals for my life in the sense of what's the one thing I can do today that will make the biggest difference. And I started to try to treat my mornings as, look, I'm going to try to win my morning and do the things that are most important for me, for my life, for my career. And then at 9 o'clock, then I'll start my job. Then I'll start wherever I'm at. Then I'll plug into the expectations that I have. And so I would show up at the office a couple hours early. And it was really interesting because everyone thought I was this, I was working, I was slaving, I was, doing the 10-hour days. But the first 2 hours of the morning, I was there for me, right? And I just so happened I went to the office because it was quiet. But I started following a guy named Pat Flynn back in the day.
Love Pat Flynn. We are on the same wavelength.
Yeah, and I want to one day shake his hand because I read everything he did and I launched a website, and it has nothing to do with what I do today, but I was at the time, and still do, but I was struggling with a lot of anxiety, and man, it just was like overpowering. And yes, there's lots of medicinal ways you can deal with that, but I was looking for holistic solutions. I didn't want a crutch of medicine. I wanted to look, how do I identify this, and how do I work within my situation? And so I launched a website primarily for me, but around healthy ways to deal with anxiety and depression and help convert that, empower you to move to a space of happiness and healthy living. And I launched that as a side hustle, and I'll never forget the very first dollar I made. It was so amazing.
So fun when that happens. Yes.
It was so awesome because I realized money and profit, it's just a tool of validation. I had put something out there, and the profit that I received was validation that it was received by the marketplace. It was received by someone who that information had created value, and they were willing to exchange their money for that value. And so that really opened up the mindset for me. And especially because I did it online, it was this natural form of leverage. So I did that for a couple more years. And I took the money that I was making from that side hustle. In fact, I actually ballooned that side hustle. I was making more money off of that than I was a 6-figure career.
Wow.
I took all of that money and I was putting it to an investment strategy that was built on cash flow. So in my personal life, no longer was I putting money in a 401k and crossing my fingers and all of that stuff. I was investing in a way that I had more control, and I was building cash flow and my goal was, hey, I want to be financially free. I want to be financially free. And all I could think of at the time was I was in a lot of pain, right? I was in a lot of pain, and financial freedom for me was, how do I get rid of this pain? I didn't know what I wanted. I just knew I didn't want what I had.
Right.
And as I started to gain traction in my financial plan, both from what I was making online as well as how I was investing, it started to open up possibilities for me in my mind. And I knew they were always there, but for the first time, I gave myself permission to see them. And that's really what opened myself up, because as I was doing this investing, I had a lot of friends and family that in the beginning said, you're crazy. You're not taking your company sponsored match. You're not putting money in a 401k. You're doing the exact opposite, and you're crazy. But over time, as I started getting consistent results, things started to change and I was more confident, but then people started asking me questions. What are you doing? And that opened up. It was so fulfilling for me to teach people what I was doing. I had so much fun doing it. I loved watching people take what I was doing and apply it in their own life and be empowered with money rather than, ashamed of it or disempowered by it. And watching that's what led me to ultimately start what we do today, is coaching people in their financial plan, not to retire. I don't believe in the idea of retirement, but I do believe in the idea of living a purpose-driven life. Right. And if money isn't the primary reason why you're making decisions, like if you can make a decision of what do I want to do, then that's the best utilization of your time. And for many people, I've seen them, like you, Jena, launch businesses and careers that were completely opposite. It was this passion that they had, but they were kind of stuffing it down in the pursuit of money. And so the goal for us is empower you with money, live a purpose-driven life. And in many cases, you'll earn more money along that path because you're following your passion. You're following what you're naturally good at and putting it, in the service of other people.
Yeah. No, you have said, and this was kind of in your bio, and I actually heard you say this on Ellen's podcast as well. You said that what you guys teach now is that traditional finance is dangerous, misleading, or outright wrong. So when I heard you say that, I was like, oh my gosh, that is a very bold statement. So can you share, maybe perhaps even starting with what does it mean to be financially free? And then why do you feel like you can say that claim of traditional finance is dangerous, misleading, or outright wrong?
Yeah, that is scary, isn't it? And, we do that intentionally because here's the thing. I believe, and after having gone through it myself and the business partners I work with, they have gone through it, and we've now helped, hundreds approaching thousands of clients through it as well. I believe that anyone that uses the right set of principles and tactics can be financially free in 10 years or less. I believe anyone can do that. But if you look to the opposite, what we're told is that you're going to retire one day. And Jen, I'm going to ask you this question straight up because this is the biggest flaw in that idea. How much money do you have to retire?
I don't know the answer to that. I don't know the answer to that. Brett, my fiance and I were just having this discussion about how much we want in retirement. And he just threw out a number. I was like, how'd you come to that? He goes, I don't know. I just picked a number. That sounds good.
And this is where it gets really scary. Take your finance hat off for just a minute and let's put your life hat on. Are you a sports fan?
I like the Steelers. I like all of Pittsburgh sports, but I prefer the Steelers. Yes.
Okay. Let's wave the terrible towels, right? Let's rotate those terrible towels around. If you show up to a Steelers game, can you look at the Steelers game and know who's winning at any moment's notice?
Yeah. You know who's winning. Look at the scorecard or the scoreboard rather.
The scoreboard right there. So the biggest flaw in personal finance is there is no scoreboard. You have no idea how much you have to have. You have no idea how close you are. You have no idea, what you have to do to impact the outcome. You have no idea. And that's the fallacy of this retirement. It's just this fuzzy dream that one day you're going to have enough money. And now, believe me, Jen, I've met with thousands of people throughout the years. No one ever knows the answer to that question. And the sad reality of it is, whether you have enough money or not, most people feel a sense of anxiety as they approach retirement. And the reason is they've put their money in places that they don't control. So they're highly hypersensitive to, what's going to happen in the market? Who's going to be elected as the president? What's going to happen with taxes? How long am I going to live? And whether you have enough money or not, it becomes irrelevant because you played by a faulty set of rules that A, you didn't know how to win, and B, you don't really know what the definition of financial freedom is. So the reason we say 97% is dangerous, misleading, or wrong is you're not empowered in that game, and nor can you ever be financially free in 10 years or less, putting money in a 401k and getting your company sponsored match. The math just doesn't work in your favor. So
and it's like gambling. It's like gambling. It's like it's legal gambling that we've accepted as being the way.
and think about that. Not only is it legal gambling, literally you're putting all of your hopes and dreams into a gambling scenario. And think about the loss there, the trade-off there. The trade-off is you trade 40 years of your life gambling. And if you get to the end of your rope, like you're in your 50s or 60s and you realize, holy crap, the gamble didn't work. What can you do about it?
Right. Yeah, you're up a, as we say in Pittsburgh, you're up a creek without a paddle. That's, you got nowhere to go. And it's funny too, because I don't know if you know this, but my background is on Wall Street. I worked at the New York Stock Exchange, and I can tell you that makes sense to me what you're talking about, because you don't know what the rules that you're playing by, right? It is totally, you're up to the whim of what the markets are doing. And so anyway, sorry, keep going. But yes, I totally agree with you.
No, Jenna, you're totally right. So that, as I went down the rabbit hole for myself, like I was in so much pain. I wanted to be financially free. And I remember I started listening to the podcast and reading the books and trying all the things. And everything I tried seemed to be the same thing, just a different version. Well, hey, you don't like what you're getting in your 401k? Well, try this investment strategy, try that investment strategy. And everything was, hey, take a little bit more risk. Maybe you'll get a little bit higher rate of return. And I just ended up riding a bigger roller coaster. So because of the Wall Street machine, because of the financial machine, like go back to when Apple came out, right? Remember when iPhones came out and they first started coming out with apps? And if you wanted to find a local restaurant, remember the commercial back in the day that said there's an app for that?
Yes, I do remember that. Yeah.
Yeah, that's kind of like how Wall Street plays the game. Hey, if you want to invest in real estate, there's a fund for that. Oh, if I want to invest in precious metals, there's a fund for that. And technically what you're doing, you're not really investing in those things. You're just putting your money in a different game that, again, you have no control or no leverage on. So for us, the reason we say that it's dangerous, misleading, or wrong is A, you don't control it. B, you don't know how to win. And C, we have a whole challenge that we take people through. The math is not in your favor. Like you can go through and put your numbers, how much money you have, how much money you're saving, and we tell you how much money you have to have if you do it traditionally. And no one ever has enough money, nor do they have then we tell them the rate of return that's required, and neither way is possible. So our goal isn't to help you do what everyone else is doing better, because again, here's the reality. How does Wall Street, how do they present their facts and their data? It's all based on an average return. Well, the average investor gets this. So if you want average results, just do what everyone is doing. If you want better results, try to do average plus one. But if the math doesn't work, our goal is to not help you do what everyone else is doing better, is to do the exact opposite.
I gotcha. So what does it mean then to be financially free? Because when you say that, I think it perks people's ears up who are listening. They're like, I actually don't know what that means. So what does that mean to be financially free?
That's awesome. I love that, Jenna. So it's a really simple definition. When your assets, so at the end of the day, right, when you retire or you're financially free, all we're trying to work out is how much income do your assets produce, right? If we understand how much income your assets produce and how long that income is going to last, then you pair that up with what your expenses are. And when your passive income exceeds your expenses, you are by definition financially free. You own your time. Right. And so the entire game that we play is we help people understand where to put their money to generate the most cash flow and the most predictable stream of cash flow. And then we tie that to what we understand and control their expenses. And now it's just a lever. Now, if their expenses are $5,000 a month and they're generating $1,000 a month in cash flow, we're 20% of the way there. We're looking at a scoreboard that we understand. We're looking at a scoreboard that we can predict. Good. And we're looking at a scoreboard we can impact.
That's really good. So this applies and this is just for everyone that's listening. This is not just for entrepreneurs. So I don't want you to hear this and think like, this is just applicable to me because I'm an entrepreneur and I can do this. This is applicable for my 9-to-5ers too, correct?
Oh, 100%. No, I did this. This is how I walked away from my 9-to-5. Like it was actually pretty awesome, Jenna. So for me, I did this strategy. So I was running my side hustle, right? And I never did my side hustle full time. I was taking that side hustle and I was investing it in cash flowing assets. And I did this for about 4 years. And my wife and I, it was really interesting. Now we're living in Colorado. And my wife and I had been talking about, we'd been watching our cash flow going up and the predictable results over 4 years. And the possibilities started to open up that, holy cow, I could leave a 6-figure job. I could walk away and be more intentional with what I wanted to do with my time. And so it started opening up. And I remember, we had these conversations, but there was still a lot of fear inside of me of walking away from that stable 9-to-5 job. And I remember I was sitting in my boss's office, and this is, about 4 years after 2008. And a lot of companies were still kind of reeling and trying to figure out the new economy. And I remember I got a mandatory promotion. My boss sat me down and said, hey, Ryan, you're going to take over 2 more states, right? You're going to travel now 20% more than you were, which was already about 65% of my time.
Wow.
Take over 2 more states. And we're going to pay you. I can't even remember what it was. And I remember I sat there in my chair. And I started doing the math in my head. I had already done the math over and over, but I sat there in my chair and I was doing the math in my head. And at the time, I had about $4,500 of just, standard monthly expenses at the time, mortgage, car payment, food on the table, that kind of stuff.
Sure.
And I had enough cash flow to pay those. right? I had enough cash flow coming in from my assets to pay those expenses. And at the time, like I was just doing that math in my head, and I responded right back to my boss and I said, you know what? I quit.
Wow, that's such a fun story. I love the I quit stories. Maybe I need to do a whole podcast series about I quit stories.
It was so fun because I walked out of the office and I was like hyperventilating. I'm like, oh, what did I just do? I should turn around. I was so scared, like all of those negative voices in my head. And I called my wife and I said, Beth, I just quit. And she's like, it's about time.
Well, I love what you said, because you mentioned the fear and like the kind of the gremlins in your head talking to you about your finances. I'd love if you could share a little bit about that and how much do you feel like mindset plays? Because I talk about this a lot with clients, their mindset. How much do you think mindset plays into the way that you think about your money, the way you operate with your money? Talk to us a little bit about that.
Oh, Jenna, I love that question. In fact, I think the number one question I get asked inside of my profession is what's the best investment? Where should I put my money? Mm-hmm. And the answer always frustrates people. But your best investments is, if you have to ask me that question, you're naive and you're not empowered with money, right? And so your best investment is in yourself.
Right.
It's in your mindsets, your skill sets, and your network. Those are the three areas that will deliver the most value and the most certainty to your life. In the beginning, I had no idea how to launch an online website. I had no idea. I had to invest in my mindset. I had to see a dream and a possibility that others couldn't see, right? And once I had invested in that mindset and I was comfortable setting goals and pushing the boundaries of what I thought was possible, I then had to take that mindset and translate that into the physical world in the form of a skill set. I had never launched a website. Never, ever, ever. And so I'm so grateful for Pat Flynn. He was living his life authentically, and he had a very awesome quitting story in his life as well. And I followed his expertise. I invested in my mindsets, my skill set. And over time, I started to look at my network as some of the greatest resources and resources of wealth and experience that I could look at. And once I started associating with people that were living the life that I wanted to live, that had achieved the results that I wanted to achieve, it really opened up the possibility for me, because I realized, look, if they can do it, I can as well. And so mindsets, skill sets, and network, that is your absolute unequivocal best investment you can ever make.
Yeah, the mindset piece is something. I always joke that starting a business is a crash course in like figuring out all your junk. Yeah. And it never stops. I mean, I would say every single level that I've ever gotten to my business and continue to, like, this year has been, I think for everybody, let's be real, it's been a challenging year. 2020 has been a challenging year, but it's really been challenging for my mindset and the growth that we're trying to work on. And it's just for me personally to even be stepping into. It makes such a difference. Like I think sometimes I forget too, where I'll just be going around my merry way. I'm like, why isn't the strategy working? And then I'm like, oh wait, it's my mindset is the problem. Yeah. It's not actually the strategy.
And, look around the world, and I think we take this for granted, but if we look around the world, from everything that we have, from the cell phone in our hand to the cars that we drive to the planes that we fly in, those things never existed until someone was able to sit down and have a vision, and expand their mindset of what was possible. And I love a quote by Henry Ford back in the day. People were so used to horses and buggies, and he, someone asked him, how did you come up with the idea of the car? And he said, well, if I would have asked people what they wanted, they would have just asked for faster horses. Like, you have to expand your mind and see a possibility, see a vision for your life that other people can't see. And if you're around and you associate with people that aren't empowering you, they're pulling you down, right? Again, that's going to make it really hard. So mindset, skill sets, network. How do you take a vision? How do you transact that vision in the world? And how do you develop a supportive group of network around you to inspire you, to empower you?
I love that. Now, do you notice, on the same kind of topic around mindset, do you ever notice, and this might be completely irrelevant, you can totally tell me, any difference between men and women? So I work predominantly with women who are listening to this podcast, most likely. Do you notice any difference in any money and mindset issues between men or women at all?
Yeah, that's a really good. So our community inside of Cashflow Tactics is about 50-50. Okay. Women, high powered, goal oriented women, and then men as well, about 50-50. And what I notice is there's always one person that's usually driving the financial plan. And more than anything, in order to be successful, we're doing this podcast, but behind me, there's a sign. The mantra behind what we do, when we were creating Cashflow Tactics, everyone was saying, hey, you should talk about returns and investments and all this stuff. It's not at all what we do, right? What we do is we empower people. And so we say, rise up, live free. That's the leading marketing slogan of our company, is rise up, live free. And what I notice across the board between women and men, the people that are willing to take control, the people that are willing to take action, the people that are willing to accept the results and the circumstances of their life for what they are and not beat themselves up about them, but use those as fire and energy and momentum to build something better. Those are the people that are successful. And I see that in both genders, male and female. Now, what I will say is I think there's a lot of, in the women specifically, I see a lot of emotional constraints around money. They feel guilty around money.
Yeah.
And I see
that's a big one. I see it the women a lot, the guilt around money.
Yeah. Yeah. And guys, at the end of the day, man, it's so awesome. Like this idea of financial freedom, it's not one day, it's today. Like look at your life and look at money this way. Money is a tool. That's all it is. It's just a tool. It's, if I were to burn a piece of paper, you wouldn't get it all, emotionally riled up about that. But if I were to burn a piece of, a $100 bill, people would be emotional about that. So even though it's a piece of paper, all it really is a tool to represent what you want in life. And today, it's what most people are trading the best days, months, and years of their life, their sanity for. They're trading everything for money. And they're hoping that one day they'll have enough money to buy their time back. So when you get empowered with knowing what money is and what it represents, you get very clear. Rather than having money that you just emotionally spend on the next thing, you're intentional about where you spend your money. You should spend your money on things that deliver happiness, that deliver fulfillment to you. But then in addition to that, right, you should take your money and have a proactive goal, right? How do you buy your time back? So if you're clear on what you want and clear on where you're at and clear on what money is, money can be one of the most empowering tools that you can use. But without that clarity, you're just going to spin your wheels.
Right. I love that. So we've talked a lot about, talking about the mindset. We've talked about what it actually means to be financially free. We've talked a little bit about what people are getting wrong when it comes to their finances. So what is the solution? Can you share a little bit more about, cash flow tactics? And I also, for the record, I love your mantra of rise up, live free, because I also know that there is some Hamilton reference in there where you came up with that.
Dude. Hamilton, I've been trying to get Hamilton on our podcast now for about 6 months. So I think I'm pretty close, but not Hamilton. I've been trying to get Lin-Manuel Miranda on the podcast.
Yeah.
But yeah. So we've been doing this business now for about 7 years. And over the last, about 3 years, we had really refined our strategy down to something. It was just like a system. Like it was almost like a conveyor belt. I knew if you put in a certain effort that what your outcome was going to be. And so we decided to take everything down about 3 years ago and rebrand it. And when we rebranded it, it was so awesome because I went to the Broadway musical Hamilton.
Which I'm so jealous, by the way. I lived in New York and I never went.
It spoke to my heart. I mean, the entire story. My wife and I walked away and we were just moved beyond belief. And the idea of Alexander Hamilton taking control and being just relentless in his pursuit of living a great life and creating his legacy, not waiting for his legacy to come to him and rising up, all of those ideas, those thoughts, we brought those into Cash Flow Tactics when we rebranded it, because that really embodies, I think, the entrepreneurial, we call it the producer revolution inside of Cash Flow Tactics. Our goal is to create producers, and producers create more value than they consume. Producers use money as a tool to build and live a life that they love. Producers use profit as a tool of validation, right? When there's a profit to be made, that just means I provided service and someone was willing to exchange their dollars for the service that I provided. So it's a tool of validation that I'm on the right track. I'm doing the right thing. So we created this whole culture around being a producer and rising up. But really at the end of the day, Jena, it's really pretty simple. When we say 97% is dangerous, misleading, or wrong, it becomes really easy. If we can help you see that, then it's not about doing what everyone else is doing. It's about doing the exact opposite. And what we did is we look back over hundreds of years. And if you look at the wealthy, the independently wealthy, they have done things different. They invest their money different. They understand, they play by a different set of rules. And so for us, we have what we call a financial freedom formula. And all it is, it's our goal is to empower people with money. And you have to understand different skill sets of money based on what you're trying to do with it. So the very first thing inside of our community is we talk about this idea of production. Your best resource, your best asset is your ability to produce, right? To make money. And Jena, that's why I love what you do, is you help people get into their dream career and really, really embrace that. Well, I bet you see across the board that people start making more money when they're engaged in something that's meaningful to them. Would you agree with that?
Yeah. Oh, 120%. It is. And they also value themselves more too. I get that with a lot of people in corporate life who maybe don't really value their skills. They're like, how much money could I get? But never like thinking, no, I deserve this much.
Yeah.
So again, kind of that emotional aspect of it. So yeah, no, I'm totally in agreement with you.
So the first thing is we teach the skill sets, the mindset around making money. And just like you said, that gives people a sense of confidence and ultimately really a sense of certainty. Like if everything falls apart around you, the one thing I can't come take away is your ability to create value. I can't come take that away from you. So that's your internal sense of certainty. Once you do that though, it's not what you make, it's what you keep. And it was really interesting as I got into this world of helping people with their money. You know, some of the people, yeah, they had saved pretty well, but I can't tell you how many people I met with that, you know, their public personas, I knew, you know, from publicly what I thought they would be making. I thought this is going to be so easy. I'm going to take the millions of dollars that they've made over the years because I know who this person is. And I'm just going to show them, how do I take it from here and put it over here and you're financially free overnight? And I was blown away over and over and over and over again. People who had made a lot of money had nothing to show for it. And so in the long run, it's not what you make, it's what you keep that makes the biggest difference. So we teach production and then we teach what we call protection. And a lot of that is constantly raising your foundation and using the tax code as a tool, not as, you know, I think everyone gets fearful of the tax code. The tax code is actually written like a treasure map. It's really written to incentivize behavior. In fact, if you look at the tax code, and I won't go too deep into this, but the first page of the tax code says basically everything that you make is taxable. Every page after that are all the ways that you don't have to pay taxes. And
you're like, please sign me up for that.
Right? Most people are afraid of the tax code. And yes, it's complicated. You know, it's a lot of jargon in there. But if you understand how to use the tax code, the IRS, they're using it as a way to incentivize behavior. They want you to put your money in certain places. And if you do it, you pay less in taxes, not just now, but always in the future as well. And so the goal number one is empowering you with production, then protection, and then profit. And the third element of profit is really how do we start aligning your asset or your dollars with assets that produce cash flow? And how do we build a system where you make money, you keep money, and you turn it into cash flow? And once you have that system down, you're following this formula, it gives you repeatable, duplicatable, predictable results. And at that point, financial freedom becomes inevitable.
I love it. Can you share what maybe on that last piece there, like when you say that, I think people are probably going to be like, well, what is the thing? What are those types of assets? So if you feel comfortable, can you share maybe just one example?
Heck yeah. So in the world of cash flow, we actually have a whole strategy around, we call it the 4 pillars. And there's a lot of context here, right? So it's hard to just say what it is.
Totally, that's fine.
But the context is, look, if you invest your money in the right way, let's just do two examples, okay? Let's say you put your money into the stock market. What is the one way, hopefully, that you make money inside of the stock market?
The stock price you can cash out. You bought it maybe low and then you're going to sell it high.
Bingo, right? So that's called appreciation, right? In the world of investing, that's called appreciation. Now, do you have any control over the perceived value of the asset?
Not entirely. No, actually not at all. I was thinking around like, well, I could buy an iPhone or I could, you know, like something like that.
As soon as you press the buy button, your control goes out the window. And really, this is where the math does not work in your favor. Now it's just a waiting game. And over time, yes, the asset's going to go up in value more than likely, but it's a 30 to a 40-year game, right? Now, go back to 2008. In 2006, 2007, a lot of people were getting out of the stock market and they were putting their money into real estate thinking, oh, real estate's awesome. Right? And they were buying real estate the same way they were buying stocks, thinking that real estate will always go up in value. Now, again, if we don't have any control over appreciation inside of the stock market, do we have any control over appreciation inside of the real estate markets?
No, not entirely, I guess.
At least over yes, you can kind of put some more value in, and that's called flipping. That's one of a business. You could, put some more value with the home fast. But over the long run, if you're going to buy and hold an asset, right, you don't really have a whole lot of control over the appreciation of the asset. So that's how most investors play. That's how most Main Street investors play. But the reality of it is there's 4 ways that you can make money when you invest, right? Most people only think of and invest in ways that they get appreciation. And that's why they feel paralyzed. That's why they feel that there's no control. And that's why it's the long game. However, and I'll use real estate. Is it possible that you could buy an asset like real estate, but buy it for cash flow, buy it for an income producing piece of real estate? Is it possible that you could take that positive rental income and have the asset go up in value at the same time?
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah. and one wouldn't impact the other, right? I mean, you could take
Right.
cash flow and the value of your house could go up.
Right.
Along the way, is it also possible that the IRS could say, look, if you invest in real estate, the gains that you make, you'll pay no taxes on it.
Interesting. Okay. You're blowing my mind here. I didn't even think of that.
So that's three pillars, right? Now you've got appreciation, now you've got cash flow, and now you have tax advantages. The fourth pillar, so this, we call this four pillars. There's four ways you can make money when you invest if you know how to invest. The fourth one is leverage, right? You can buy an asset. Now leverage is dangerous, so this is why you have to rise up and you have to understand how to impact the investment.
Right.
But you can buy an asset that is valued at $100,000, but you don't have to have $100,000 to own and control that asset. You can use 20% of your own money and 80% of the bank's money, right? And use leverage. But now that leverage amplifies all of your returns because you only put $20,000 in, but you have a $100,000 asset generating up, the cash flow that it generates and the tax advantages that it generates. So those are the four pillars the ways that you make money. And it's actually a way to increase your return and decrease your risk, because in the stock market, if the stock market goes down, what can you do?
Yeah, nothing.
Nothing, right? And most
You're
people
like, well, that's that. I'll watch some more Squawk in the Street or whatever and see if I can get more up to date and make a better choice.
But think about the real estate. Like in 2008, we owned real estate in 2008. And yes, the value went down. But what happened? I just sat back and I collected my rent checks, right? And I collected my tax deduction. So because I have multiple ways that I make money within an investment, now I'm earning a higher return, but I'm taking less risk. So there's three assets that have all four pillars. Number one is real estate. Number two is a business. And number three is an asset that we call the vault. So all we do inside of our strategy is we line up production, protection, profit, and the last element is prosper. How do you live a life that matters today? But we line these elements up and we say, look, with the money that's coming in, how do we use it as a tool that you're in control of to make money, to keep money, to turn it into cash flow? And how do we build a repeatable, duplicatable system around that? And our vision of this is not vision. I know because I've seen it happen in so many people's lives. Anyone can do this, regardless of your age, income, or experience. If you're willing to focus, if you're willing to rise up, and you're willing to do the exact opposite from what everyone else is talking about.
Gosh, I love that. Friends, I hope you are encouraged by this. I feel like I have a lot to chew on after this conversation. I'm like, we need to talk afterwards. But if people want to find out more about cash flow tactics and the programs that you guys offer, where could people find you? Because I think what you're talking about too is just something that people just are almost avoid talking about or avoid thinking about. And I know that this is true of people, and especially in 9 to 5, where I'm going to worry about that problem when it becomes a problem. And that by that point, it's too late. It's similar to I'm going to worry about networking when I need a job. And at that point, it's too late because you should have been doing it before. So where can people find out more about you and the Cash Flow Tactics team?
Yeah. And Jena, just to reiterate what you just said, it's too late. I mean, guys, the one resource we have is our time. And I think we all think we have abundant, inexhaustible time. But I'll tell you what, 2 years ago, we had someone in our community, and we've seen this now happen a few times, but we had someone in our community and he was actually killed so he worked out in Hawaii and he was killed on a military base out there by a terrorist. Wow. Right. And he was 30 years old. He left his wife and a young child. Guys, I don't know when your life is over, but I know the one thing that happens, right? People wait, and then it becomes too late. And the biggest regret that people have at the end of their life, and I think this is Thomas Thoreau that said this, their song, right? Their purpose in life is still inside of them. And they kept thinking that one day they would get that out there, but most people die with their song inside of them. So if you're ready to rise up, if you're ready to take control of your time and live a purpose-driven life, then for us, the best way for people to understand what we do is, just like I said, there's a lot of context to what we do. You have to unlearn almost everything you've been taught around money. So you can learn the few things that actually work. So we have a 5-day challenge. In that 5-day challenge, we take you through 5 exercises. We help you get exactly clear on where you're at, what winning looks like for you, why you'll never win, likely on the path that you're on, and how to realign your money as a tool to get what you want. And for us, it's called the Cash Flow Tactics, or just go to cashflowtactics.com/challenge. Okay. Or you can go to our Facebook group, look us up on Facebook, cashflowtactics.com, and you can take the free challenge there. It's free. We do all of this just to wake people up. Once people are awake, those that have eyes to see and ears to hear, if you're ready to do the work, it's not a hard process. We empower you across the board to take control of your financial plan.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Ryan. I really appreciate it. We'll have all those links up in the show notes for you guys. Friends, do not run to that challenge. I say now more than ever, I think this is so important, especially in the world that we are living in. And I think it's just shown us too, in the midst of COVID, just how unpredictable life is, and to take back control of your career, as I like to say, and of your finances, as Ryan likes to say. So I will see you next time on the Your Career Story podcast. Hey, y'all. Thanks so much for listening to Your Career Story podcast. I would love to get to meet you. And there are a couple of ways that we can connect in between episodes. First and foremost, you know I love my LinkedIn. Second is via Instagram. And third is over on my website. I actually have a special spot just for you full of fun, free resources. So all you have to do is go to www.jenaviviano.com/resources. Super simple, for a bunch of freebies that will help you boost your career. Hope to see you next week.